Jefferson Smith is on the line with us. He is an executive with low-power radio station X-Ray FM, xray.fm is the website, and the host of the show Thank You Democracy on X-Ray FM. It's 91.1 FM in Portland, Oregon. And Jefferson, welcome back. You called in yesterday, and I didn't realize you were you until you hung up. For some reason, your voice sounded different or something. I don't know what it is. But anyhow, welcome back. Welcome back to the program.
It's nice to hear your voice. I called in. I hadn't done that before. We've talked on the air before, but I'd never called in and waited in line and waited my turn. I figured it was my duty to do that. I was glad to have taken a chance. I now know how earnest people are who want to call in and talk to you, how long they're willing to wait. It makes me respect what you do and respect what they do even more, but it's good to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. For our listeners who don't know, you started the bus project in Portland. You're a major, you're one of the activists and gurus of activists whom I most respect in all of the various folks that I've. Oh, geez. Hang on just a second. Hold on. Yeah, I just did it again. Only this time I'm going to lock the line, and I'm going to move my mouse over. Jefferson, you're still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You're one of the guys I really respect, and you really understand movement politics. And you were a member of the Oregon State Legislature, were you not?
I was.
Yeah, and now you're running the radio station. So what are your thoughts on where the, for lack of a better phrase, the Bernie movement is at? Shall we call it the progressive movement within the Democratic Party, the Warren wing of the party? Well, however, what are your thoughts on that? And what's next for it?
I go as specifically as we might be. Calling it the Bernie movement, the Bern movement. I actually would say that I would start with that. I think that there is a really important moment focused even just there, and I do have some thoughts on it. I'd start with looking at some analogs. You and I, you're a Vermont guy, and Howard Dean was a Vermont guy, and he ran for president. And with the dawn kind of the internet revolution, the Dean for America didn't become President Dean, but did become Democracy for America.
Right, and Jim Dean, Howard's brother, is still running it.
Exactly, and
they're doing great
part
trainings.
Of the conversation. Yep, it's done local stuff. It's done some national stuff. We had another model, which was Obama for America, which became Organizing for America. What's been your sort of take on that?
I've not, frankly, heard from Organizing for America in the last 7 years. It's and I should have. I donated. I promoted. I campaigned really hard for President Obama, but it seemed to me like it just kind of fizzled out. You?
I haven't heard from them either. What they did was they became essentially an arm of, subsumed by, or partnered with, depending on what phraseology you want to use, the Democratic National Committee, and which seemed fitting because now, President Obama was President Obama,
right? And he's a Democrat.
And, I want to suggest a different model. The first thing I would say is I would think that the people who have been, millions of people who've gotten involved in the Sanders campaign, some number of thousands, tens of thousands, if we're lucky, hundreds of thousands, that would stay engaged doing stuff, would realize that there is a critical mass of influence that could be made in their communities. But the model that has been, and I've been racking my brain on this for a while, seeing the opportunity that we have and the need we have in the country to move progressive policy. And the model that seemed interesting to me was I know this is going to sound odd, but was the Christian Coalition. It was Pat Robertson who ran for president. You remember the Robertson campaign, right?
Oh, I remember it well.
1988?
Yeah. I don't remember the year, but I remember the campaign. And yeah.
So he runs. I think it was 88. I could be wrong. It was 84. I think it's 88, and doesn't win, but builds an enormous movement and before the internet era, but enormous movement of what became essentially what was and became even more clearly the Christian right. And they worked afterwards on school board races. Now, there's an advantage to working on school board. Now, I'm not advocating school board races for Dean supporters because what they wanted to do was the Robertson folks want to like edit the books that were being there. That's not the thing that the Bernie Sanders folks are worried about. But what was powerful for them was, first of all, if you pivot your energy and try to focus on, let's say, congressional races, congressional policy, and presidential choice. Now, and your Democracy for America or your Organizing for America, or the Democratic National Committee, MoveOn.org already does a bunch of that, first of all. But also, most of the people that will have, or at least a lot of the people that would be a part of that, will live in a district that is already represented by a Democrat. Lobbying Donna Edwards and Earl Blumenauer to be in favor of Obamacare is useful, is better than nobody doing that, but isn't transformative. Mm-hmm. Focusing on the national stuff, it can be harder to have an impact as important as it is. If you have a national radio program, you can. If you're a regular human being, it's a little harder. Mm-hmm. But if that energy were pivoted, the smart thing that Pat Robertson did was then they pivoted on local stuff because it doesn't take that many people to totally change the landscape in a school board election. Right. And so what I started with was thinking, what are the local things around the country that would match up with the values and ideals of the people who have been feeling the burn? And how could that energy pivot? And I'm not presupposing a result of the presidential primary, but whatever the result is of the presidential primary, that what are those local things that they could get involved in? And I have some thoughts on what they might be.
Okay. And those are?
Here are my three. All right. I'm going to do them in reverse order. I'm going to save my best for last. The third of the three would be, and I like all of them, the third of the three would be voter access stuff. Would be fighting voting rights, fighting in favor of voting rights, against voter suppression, going to state legislatures like they did in Illinois, and passing online voter registration, automatic voter registration as they passed in Oregon, I think California, and I think also working on in Illinois, getting rid of, in some jurisdictions, working to get rid of racist voter ID laws, and working powerfully locally with county clerks, statewide with secretaries of state and state legislatures on voting rights and voter access could transform.
And I would add, ending felon disenfranchisement. 1 in 3 black men in Florida right now cannot vote because of that.
Exactly. Okay, so that would be number 3. Number 2, and number 2 could be related to number 3. But number 2 would be state legislative races. This is how this is how I got into this mess. When I was thinking I'd be a corporate lawyer and started working on, and looked at the state legislature in my state of Oregon at that time was double-barreled right-wing Republicans, had been for a decade, despite this being a state that had voted for Michael Dukakis. We got a bus and went around and helped change the legislature.
We just have a minute left, Jefferson, FYI.
Yeah, so I'll do this one quick and then I'll do the big one. The state legislative races in advance of the 2010 census, in advance of redistricting, could change Congress, could change the history of the country if people focus on state legislative races. Right. And my first and last is public campaign finance or campaign finance reform at the state level, but also at the local level. Doing what Seattle just did, going in and passing a voucher program, doing it what New York has done to have a matching program to allow regular people to run.
Portland did that when I was living there.
They did, and it got and then it got undone out in a terrible year by almost a tie. There's folks who are working on getting it back done in Portland. Good. The kind of thing that the Bernie Sanders movement focused on. They could do that in 40 cities around the country, and it would change the country.
I agree. And this is all the things that we're talking about kind of fall into the rubric of an affirmative right to vote. Increasing the voter populace. I think if instead of a quarter of us voting, or maybe a half of the eligible voters voting, if we were all voting, I mean, it'd be such a better situation. Excellent points, all, Jefferson. Jefferson Smith, the website xray.fm, and Jefferson Smith is an executive there and host of Thank You Democracy on X-Ray FM 91.1 FM in Portland, Oregon. Thank you, Jefferson.
Thanks, Tom.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.